I'm Bob Carney Jr. and I'm on the ballot this Tuesday in the Republican primary for governor. In my judgment, the Tom Emmer campaign is a disaster. He needs to be replaced on the November ballot. Here's a clip from a news conference I held earlier this week. I'm here to announce today that if I win the Republican primary, I will offer to withdraw as a candidate if the Republican convention is reconvened and they endorse a reasonable, mainstream Republican candidate for governor other than Emmer. By the way, something like this happened with the Republican ticket for governor in 1990. John Grunsoff, the endorsed Republican candidate, withdrew just 9 days before the election, replaced by Arnie Carlson, who went on to be elected governor. My dad was an election judge that year. He didn't get home until 1 in the morning because they had to hand count special ballots for governor. I also visited State Republican Party headquarters earlier this week to deliver a notarized letter with my pledge to withdraw. The letter is on my news and information website, republicancontact.com. Hello!
What's going on, Bob?
I am trying to get someone in authority to be able to act on this document. Here's my list of 6 reasonable mainstream Republicans. I will bow out if the convention endorses any of them as a replacement for Tom Emmer, and if they agree to unallotment limits. Let's get rid of Emmer in the primary and make sure our Minnesota election judges aren't up again till all hours of the morning. I'm Bob Carney Jr. and I'm asking for your vote in this Tuesday's Republican primary for governor so we can have a reasonable, mainstream replacement candidate for Tom Emmer on the November ballot. Here's that list again. You've heard the plan for a replacement candidate. The rest of this video gives some of the specific reasons why I think the Tom Emmer disaster must be stopped. If you're already convinced, we're done. If you still need convincing, please keep watching. Here's some of the reasons why Mr. Emmer has got to go. His candidacy has proven to be disastrous. He is advocating what amounts to secession in House File 3738, which he introduced as a co-author. Here's the key sentence. A federal law does not apply in Minnesota unless that law is approved by a 2/3 vote of the members of each house of the legislature and is signed by the governor. This is a direct violation of the federal Constitution's Supremacy Clause. Minnesota would be seceding from the Union.
Well, I think Tom Emmer's effort to pick up what the Confederacy failed to pick up in the 1860s is just wrong.
We've seen him in action at the Eagle Street Grill, calling for a tips credit under the mistaken impression that servers are earning over $100,000, something that the owner at that grill later said that he never told Emmer. Emmer's Eagle Street Grill event has been in the news a lot since then.
Because I go out on Main Street, and I'll tell you what, you go out on Main Street and people understand exactly what I'm talking about. You know, you got to talk about a tip credit. You got to talk about the regulations.
What would the state have to do with tip credits?
I think you've got to give these guys the opportunity. There has to be a tip credit. Well, I didn't realize, Bill, that's a great question, but I didn't realize that this that the servers were taking home as much as 6 figures. I knew that there was an imbalance, but this isn't my business. And I didn't realize that it could be that great, that somebody could be taking home well over $100,000 as a server.
Emmer responded by holding an event for servers at the Old Mexico Restaurante, another bar restaurant.
Here we are.
Yes, I do.
Hi, my name is Ann. I've waited tables for over 10 years. I'm absolutely horrified by the statements I watched you make on film.
A tip credit lets employers pay tipped employees less than the regular minimum wage. There are 2 requirements. Wages plus tips must be at or above the minimum wage, and wages can't be lower than $2.25 per hour, the federal minimum wage for tipped employees. He later went to an event at Old Mexico Restaurante to supposedly listen to servers, and repeatedly denied that he had ever called for reducing servers' wages. That is, in fact, exactly what a tips credit is. Here's the bottom line. Emmer's tips credit would take about $3 to $4 per hour from most Minnesota servers. And a server's wages could be reduced to $2.15 an hour. the federal minimum wage for tipped employees. We're off to the next bar.
But the other thing that I will tell you is somebody reported that last week I talked about cutting servers' wages. I'm here to look everybody in the eye and tell you I never said that. I would not. Go ahead and laugh all you want. I would never say that. Here's what we said. It was never a proposal for tip credit. I was just asked if a tip credit proposal came through. Would you give it consideration? Would you support it? And I said yes. That's it. There's no proposal. Haven't seen it. Hey, Katie, that is the problem. And I don't know where you got the idea that Tom Emmer wants your wage to be $2.13 an hour. That, again, is a wonderful deal that when the media, hey, good. You check out YouTube. You and I come on over. Let's sit down. You and I can both watch it together, okay? Let's not talk about that any longer. What the media has reported is Emmer said we want to cut your wage. No, I don't. I said it again. I want to raise your wage. So let's get a couple of things straight. I never said cut your wages. Connie, the discussion over here about people not understanding a tip credit is because somebody in our media reported it is automatically telling you, Connie, who works her tail off for the minimum wage and whatever tips she gets, that Emmer somehow wants you to earn $2.13 an hour. That is not true. That is absolutely false, Connie. That is not what I said, and I'm going to tell you this. If you'll allow me to do this.
So he's extremely careless with the facts.
We work so hard. Most of us don't have health insurance.
Mr. Emmer has not released a budget. He has irresponsibly suggested on Minnesota Public Radio that it would be easy to cut a third from all state spending, and that's about $20 billion out of a total spending budget at all levels of about $60 billion. But again, he has not detailed any method of doing this. Here's what the Star Tribune said about my budget. His realistic budget plan, more detailed than any yet seen from Emmer, includes a $3 billion tax increase. I had an op-ed piece in the Star Tribune taking a look at the situation with the unallotment law, and the fact is that that law still gives the governor extraordinary power to, in effect, take over the role of the legislature in establishing policies and priorities. The Minnesota Supreme Court ruling, in fact, is very narrow. It says that the biennium has to start with a balanced budget, but that's the only precedent that is required. The rest of that opinion is dicta. And it's very easy to start with a balanced budget. All you would have to do is veto the K-12 bill and veto the Health and Human Services bill. At that point, the Supreme Court requirements met, and the governor could then call a special session and allow the legislature to pass anything that they think is reasonable, and he could sign it. But he could then use the unallotment to cut any percentage from 0 to 100 of any appropriation based on his own view of what priorities should be. And as long as there's 1/3 plus 1 of boots on the ground in the legislature to back that up, the governor's actions could be enforced, and there would be no additional tax revenue. Given what Mr. Emmer has said about how easy it would be to cut $20 billion, it's hard to think that he would do anything other than cutting to try to bridge a $6 billion budget gap. That would be extremely disruptive. We need to cut going forward. There's no question about that. But it has to be done in an orderly, deliberate way, and it has to be done by the legislature, not by the governor. One more time. I'm Bob Carney Jr., and I'm asking for your vote in this Tuesday's Republican primary for governor so we can have a reasonable, mainstream replacement candidate for Tom Emmer on the November ballot.